everyone and welcome to another video. So we all know that the Master was first introduced in the 1971 story Terror of the Autons, and whilst we don't know for sure how many incarnations the Master has had, Roger Delgado's is certainly the first that we ever see on screen. But what if I were to tell you that some fans believe the Master made his first TV appearance 2 years earlier, in 1969's The War Games? Yes, fans such as myself like to believe that the War Chief seen in that story is actually an incarnation of the Master, perhaps the very one that comes right before Roger Delgado's incarnation in the Master's own personal timeline. But why is this, and is there any evidence to back it up? Well, let's start off with the evidence for this. Now, there obviously isn't anything from the TV show to actually say one way or another whether the War Chief is the Master or not. So let's turn our attention to the expanded media. The Target novelizations are perhaps the best evidence to support the idea that the War Chief is indeed an incarnation of the Master. You see, in the Colony in Space novelisation called Doctor Who and the Doomsday Weapon, Malcolm Hulke, who had co-written the War Games with Terrance Dicks, had decided to establish the Doctor and the Master as being the only two Time Lords who had ever left Gallifrey. This meant that there was only one person that the War Chief could be: the Master. And indeed, the events of the War Games were even briefly touched upon in that novelisation as well. Hulke would then have the War Chief basically state the same thing about him and the Doctor being the only Time Lords who had stolen TARDISes. This was in his novelisation of the War Games, and Hulke deliberately echoed what had already been stated in the earlier novelisation. Terrance Dicks would then seem to back all of this up in his novelisation of Terror of the Autons. In this novel, it is stated that the title of Master is a new one, and that whilst the Doctor has foiled the Master's schemes before, the Master had escaped the Time Lords before they could punish him. The Third Doctor says in this book he was luckier than I was, referencing the Second Doctor's trial and subsequent exile to Earth in the War Games. So it sounds like they are indeed meant to be the same person, right? I mean, surely if the writers of the War Games think that the War Chief is an incarnation of the Master, then he must be. But the whole thing isn't as clear-cut as that. You see, the idea that the Doctor and the Master were the only ones ever to leave Gallifrey was later contradicted by the introductions of characters like Drax and Nirani on TV. And what about the meddling monk? Why wasn't he mentioned in those novelisations as well? I mean, there was an idea for a while that the monk was also an incarnation of the Master, but that has since been debunked by quite a few Big Finish audios. And whilst the Colony in Space and Terror of the Autons novelisations said that it was just the Doctor and the Master who had left Gallifrey, I don't believe they ever actually explicitly mentioned the War Chief by name. There's also stuff out there that explicitly makes out that the War Chief and the Master are two very different people. The most notable example is from the Virgin New Adventures. In Time Rim Exodus, the War Chief returns, having survived the events of the War Games but in a very bad state. There is no mention of the Master, and the Seventh Doctor treats the War Chief like he's someone who he'd thought he'd defeated a long time ago. And this book was written by Terrance Dicks himself. But it's worth mentioning that Virgin's official policy when it came to the subject was that they were two separate characters. So it could be that they merely asked Dix to write the story in a way that would reflect that, and he merely complied with their request. There's also the fact that obviously the idea of the Master wasn't thought up until later on in real life, long after the War Games had been broadcast. I bring this up because I know some people will use it to back up their point that they're not the same character. But honestly, does that really stop us fans from retconning them to be the same? Not really, no. We can believe whatever we want to believe, really, and can make things make sense in our own headcanons in order to back up our beliefs. I think the fact that I'm even making this video just speaks to how much it's open to debate. Like many things when it comes to the question of Doctor Who's canon, there is no official line as such, so we can choose to believe whatever we want. There's nothing stopping us, and that's kind of nice, really. Doctor Who doesn't have a rigid structure to follow when it comes to its canon, like some other sci-fi franchises such as Star Trek or Star Wars do. It's entirely up to us fans to make up our own minds about stuff like this. If you ask me, I believe the War Chief is an incarnation of the Master. I think it would make a lot of sense and would make us look at his scenes with the second Doctor in the War Games in a whole new light. The War Chief does arguably have something very Master-like about him, and his whole scheme to help the Warlords does feel like something the Master would do. He even wants the Doctor's help to take over from the Warlords and dominate the universe. If that doesn't sound like the Master, then I don't know what does. And yeah, if one of the people who wrote the War Games, Malcolm Hulke, seems to think that he was the Master, and Terrance Dicks seems to at least kind of back that up during his Target days, then that's good enough for me, and is all the proof I need. Yes, the stuff about the Doctor and the Master being the only two Time Lords who left their society doesn't make much sense with what we now know about the show's canon, but I'm sure there are ways around it. We could even just ignore that bit if we really wanted to. Yes, the War Chief is never called anything but that in the TV story, but then neither is the Security Chief nor the Warlords called anything but those names. It seems to be more of a title the character was given, rather than his actual name. So yeah, I'm going to say that the War Chief is an incarnation of the Master, specifically the one right before Roger Delgado's, and he then regenerates into Delgado off screen after being gunned down by the Warlord's guards, and the rest, as they say, is history. But I don't have a problem if you don't agree with me. It's absolutely fine if you don't think the War Chief and the Master are the same person. Hell, I didn't even used to agree with the idea myself. I could have mentioned a lot more expanded universe material for both sides of this argument, but I thought I'd just stick to a couple of things just to make this video simpler and to prevent it from being incredibly long as well. But anyway, so there's my thoughts on whether or not the War Chief is an incarnation of the Master. But what do you think? Do you agree with me that he is or not? Please let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, so thanks for watching, hope you liked it. Please don't forget to press that subscribe button below, as well as press the bell icon at the side of it, so that you'll stay notified of when all my new videos come out. This channel currently has 2,350 subscribers at the time of writing and recording this video, but if we can get to 2,500 by the end of this year, then I will do a Q&A, where you can ask me whatever questions you want. Just keep them polite, please. Also, please rate and comment below your thoughts on all of this, and please feel free to donate to my Ko-fi page, link in the description, or send me a YouTube super thanks below, if you want to, of course. And you can also now join my Discord server, where we talk about all kinds of stuff, from what if scenarios to Doctor Who, and just whatever you want, really. You can join the server by clicking on the link in a pinned comment below, and I shall see you all in another video. So until next time, bye bye.